As we near the end of the itemized runeword series, we start moving into some of the more enjoyable runeword bases. In today's case, Scepters, which sit in a similar pile as swords, axes, maces, and polearms, in that there's a lot of really good options, so it's pretty impossible to rank them from best to worst, so we'll just go by groups instead. Though we do need to note, a major drawback of Scepters is that they can be a bit expensive to repair, especially if packed with plus skills, though there is a cube formula for that at least, so if you're willing to farm lower end runes, you might be fine. That said, while there are some really fun runewords, there are a few that still shouldn't be put in Scepters, at least not usually. Starting with Fortitude, which is L, Soul, Dole, and Low. This runeword isn't bad, it's just generally better for armor than weapons, since most of the mods carry over between them except the annoying ones. And that enhanced damage and armor, especially for certain classes, can be quite a game changer. On the other end of the spectrum, for the ones you should avoid, there are two runewords that just aren't strong enough for the cost or level requirement, starting with Venom, which is Tal, Dole, and Mal. This is essentially just normal difficulty strength for nightmare difficulty costs, with only really useful mods being Ignore Target Defense, Mana Leech, and Poison Damage, which you can get better versions of from stronger weapons. The other one is Wind. For Sur and L, while Venom is the normal runeword for Nightmare cost, Wind is the Nightmare runeword for Hell cost. This one at least has some okay mods like faster run walk, increased attack speed, damage, etc. It's just not quite up to snuff with the level requirement a Sur runeword puts on it. That said, there are a lot of runewords that are a lot more appropriate for costs, such as one of the most fundamental runewords, Strength, which costs Am and Tier, giving you Life Leech, Crushing Blow, some stat boost, and is much more appropriate and can be used as a decent, relatively early scepter for a variety of characters, not just paladins. Another fundamental runeword that works in Scepters is Malice. For Ith, L, and Eth, it's a nice solid low-level choice as well, and due to the reasonable durability in Scepters, it can work fairly reliably for delivering bleed. Though admittedly, Scepters are a bit on the lower end of the choice for Malice, since the more popular option Flails are generally going to be faster. Another pretty solid early weapon that is kind of a hand-me-down from your high-level characters that actually works well in Scepters, but only fits in the larger ones is Honor. Am, L, Ith, Tier, and Soul for plus skills, enhanced damage, life leech, deadly strike, etc. With the right plus skills on a scepter, like the natural mods it can actually be a decent bit of fun, albeit, again, it does get a little pricey to repair, but this one's actually kind of worth it in the late normal, early nightmare stage. A similar runeword that you can get the base for in Nightmare easily and use some super cheap runes on is Holy Thunder, a Scepter exclusive runeword for Eth, Ral, Ort, and Tal that gives some decent damage mods. Reduced target defense, resist, some boost to Holy Shock. It's only +3. This one actually has more on it because, well, that's what it had on it naturally. And it actually makes this kind of a fun runeword for an early Oradin as well. And considering you get 3 of the 4 runes from a quest, it is really, really cheap and easy to make. After that, we have King's Grace, a runeword that a lot of people forget even exists because it's a sword and Scepter exclusive. It only requires Am, Ral, and Thul. It's fairly well balanced, it's cheap with decent damage boost, a pinch of attack rating, life leech. It's good enough to have in a basic weapon for playing through Nightmare if you don't end up settling for something a bit more expensive. It is kind of a direct competitor for Honor, but it does take less runes. Moving up in cost a little bit, we start getting into the more familiar runewords, starting with Lawbringer. Generally not thrown in a scepter, this runeword packs Sanctuary Aura, a good bit of elemental damage, life leech, decrepify, a few other solid mods, all for Am, Lem, and Co. So not super cheap, but cheap enough that you can make a few of them for different use cases. And since it's only 3 sockets, you can do a few tricks with weapons to force 3-socket generation as well to make it easier to get. But we'll cover that in a crafting video. After that is Passion, Dole, Ort, Eld, and Lem. The Zeal runeword, kind of not that great in Scepters since, well, you're likely already playing a character that has Zeal if you're getting Scepter-specific benefits, or you're already playing a character that has Berserk if you're, well, playing a Barbarian and using Mace Mastery with this. But it's still an okay weapon nonetheless. The only real drawback to it being the flee effect from Dole. It's still not bad in Scepters, it's just usually you'll see it more often in Phase Blades for the speed, so you can get off a few hits before the enemy gets away, and so you can pack in a bunch of elemental damage to, like, not even worry about things with. That said, Scepters are really interesting for a base for our next rune word, called Arms, something you're used to seeing earlier. This rune word can actually do okay in Scepters, and if you get a failed roll Scepter with certain plus skills, we'll cover what failed roll is in another video, you can actually play around with it to great effect. Costing Am, Ral, Mal, Ist, and Om, this weapon is a bit pricey, but plus all skills, increased attack speed, enhanced damage, and the war cries, and can make this fun little scepter later on, though usually people will still prefer placing it in like crystal swords to just have something all their characters can use. If you do get it in the proper scepter, you can have some fun with it. After that, we move into some more aggressive rune words, starting with Fury, which can go in Scepters, but is a bit pricey at Jaw, Goal, and Eth. This rune word can get really expensive to repair on a plus skills weapon, so you may want to wait until you have a regular Countess farmer to really lean into it. That said, in a Scepter, it can still be very aggressive with increased attack speed, enhanced damage, target defense modifiers, attack rating boost, bleed, deadly strike, life leech, with increased durability from Scepters. It's not quite as harsh as some of the other weapon bases to keep up with, but it is still going to be extremely expensive. It's just you'll have to use the rune formula less often. That said, this next one we thankfully don't have to worry about durability on, and that is Eternity. For Am, Bear, Ist, Soul, and Sur, you can turn an ethereal weapon into a fairly nasty, indestructible beast. Good enhanced damage, life leech, crushing blow, slow, blind, etc. all make this a rather tough nugget. The only drawback being that it doesn't have natural increased attack speed, though if you're using this on a paladin, you do have zeal and fanaticism to help curb that a little bit. Though it is worth noting, if you are using this on a paladin, don't be tempted by those revive charges, they will literally kill you. After that, though, we have one of the most paladin-sounding rune words, Hand of Justice, costing Sur, Cham, Am, and Lo. This rune word is known for the Holy Fire aura, but also packs decent attack speed and damage boosts, not to mention freeze, blind, leech, and a few other solid mods. It's a bit expensive, but can be a lot of fun in the right weapon, of which Scepters can actually be pretty decent. After that, we have another fire weapon, Phoenix, which we regularly just flip-flop around with Hand of Justice, since they're, so similar. This weapon, though, packs Redemption to keep you topped off, more of a damage boost, and a bit of Mana Leech and Deadly Strike, and it is a lot of fun to mess with, all for Vex, Low, and Jaw. Is it better or worse than Hand? That's a debate that can be had for a while. Personally, I prefer Hand of Justice for Paladins, but Phoenix works pretty good on some other characters as well, at least as a weapon. As a shield, Paladins. But anyway, that's beside the point. But both have distinct advantages and disadvantages over each other, but one constant is they are both a lot of fun to play with the build built around it. After that, we have a rune word that most people forget can go in Scepters because it's generally favored in the Berserker Axe, like we see here. Yeah, I put it in one as well. This one is Beast. Fanaticism aura, increased attack speed, enhanced damage, crushing blow, bleed, and a plethora of other solid mods. This weapon is basically an upgraded Fury with an unfortunately upgraded cost as well, taking Bear, Tyr, Maul, and Lum. The price difference isn't massive, but it's definitely there, and is especially more difficult when you're doing solo self-found since you have to find so many more runes. That said, this weapon is the cornerstone for the werebear flavors of a lot of builds and can be pretty solid even in the right scepter. Last and not least is the infamous Rift, most commonly known for being used in Assassin Riftsyn builds, but can be used on a wide variety of builds for multiple classes. For Hel, Ko, Lem, and Gol, you basically get a Frozen Orb machine gun that may lack on physical damage, but packs stats, elemental damage, attack rating, the ability to cast Tornado, and like we said, Frozen Orb while fighting, and a few other nice little perks. While a bit more of a niche weapon, it belongs to the expensive but good category, with several of the preceding rune words for just kind of how far it can be taken, even though it may only be seen in some of these more esoteric builds that you can recognize by having Rift at the beginning of their token names. Do you have a favorite rune word for your Scepters? Is there a character you're playing that you need help choosing rune words for? Mention it down below, and it may even get its own video, or if you're looking for another item category for rune words, they can all be found in the playlist listed in, on screen now actually. And special thanks to all the channel patrons, members, and viewers who make all this content possible.